Welcome to the EQ Fit podcast. Our mission is to equip people to prosper in every aspect of their life. Whether you're at home or in the workplace, we explore practical ways of improving success, satisfaction, finding balance, and building enjoyable and beneficial relationships. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. The last 8 episodes have focused on the 8 competencies and skills from emotional intelligence, specifically from the 6 seconds model of emotional intelligence. Today I want to wrap all of that up, although I will continue to infuse emotional intelligence into probably all of my future episodes. But I want to wrap this up today and really talk about the importance of emotional intelligence in our complex and rapidly changing world, because that's where we live today. Not only is the world more complex and changing at a much quicker rate, the demand on people is going up. There are so many things that I have seen just in the last few months, different reports, different surveys that talk about the discrepancies between people's internal resources and what they have available to deal with the day-to-day challenges and situations that happen, and the reality of what keeps coming at them at an ever-increasing pace. So emotional intelligence is critical. If you don't have good emotional intelligence skills that build up these internal resources that we need to manage our daily lives, whether we're at work or at home, wherever we are, then you don't even have the foundation to start to manage and navigate all of that. And this is why emotional intelligence skills are so important. They provide the foundation for us to operate in a more effective manner, in a more thoughtful way, in a way that doesn't make us feel like a pinball. And I think that's what a lot of people feel like right now. They go from one crisis to the next, or one challenge to the next, or even one opportunity to the next. But the reality is, so much of what we see in people today is reactionary, not proactive. And we want to get back to that place of being able to choose our pathway and not feel like we're just being driven by circumstances. Yes, there's a lot of challenges in our world today, but there are also skills that can help us take those challenges and turn them around so that we can be more intentional and get the outcomes that we want to get, achieve the things that we want to achieve. That's why I'm so passionate about the work that I do with people. I'm going to share some stories with you today, and then we're going to do some discovery, just kind of a recap of the 8 different competencies of emotional intelligence and how we can start to put those into play and grow those for ourselves. So, with everything that's going on in our world, I just want to share a few stories that have happened over the last 6 or 8 years that I think will give you a sense of how important emotional intelligence is in the workplace. And this is just as important at home. It isn't just for the workplace, because this concept, this myth that leave your emotions at the door and don't bring your personal stuff into work, that's nonsense. Whether or not we compartmentalize, whether or not we suppress that stuff at work, doesn't really matter, because it's still there. It still impacts us. And I'm not saying bring drama to work, and I'm not saying bring work drama home. What I'm saying is you cannot segment the brain in ways that keep you fully focused in just one thing and have personal life not affect you at work and or work life not affect you at home. So let me share a few of these stories. Several years ago, I started working with a manufacturing company who had a very toxic culture. A lot of problems there, a lot of issues. And the last thing they wanted to hear from me, these are engineers, these are people who, do welding, they do machining, they do, really hard labor, really heavy manufacturing and all of that. They really didn't want to hear terms like emotional intelligence. So I adapted my terminology and I talked about confidence and strength, mental fortitude. You know where that comes from? It comes from emotional intelligence. All of that internal resource category that I will share more later in this episode on, it all comes out of that good foundation of emotional intelligence. Well, let me tell you, several years later in my work with this organization, the culture's better, the people respond to each other much better. There is a much higher level of emotional intelligence in that organization. And that's not the only thing I do with people, but it is one of the primary elements that is so important to moving out of where you are to where you want to be. And so that was a massive change initiative that we put in place with that organization. Well, let me share another one. There is a organization I've worked for that is business to consumer or business to customer. And they're all about beautification of people's homes. When I started with them, we clicked really well and really enjoyed working with that group, especially the owners. They're wonderful friends and great people. And one of the things we were able to do, and this is a direct measure, they gave us a 12-month period. Now, we worked with them for many years, but they gave us a 12-month period to work with several of their people to really try to see what we could do to grow the organization. And in a 1 year period of time, in a 12-month period of time, we were able to help them increase their revenues by 28% and double their net profit. And that will be a case study that I'm going to work on and put out here in the near future. Now, I'm continuing to work with that organization, and my work has branched out into different areas. But the reality is, at the heart of that training, that coaching, the things that we're doing for that organization, at the heart of that was how can we leverage emotional intelligence to enhance our revenue stream, to enhance our sales success. But even underneath that, it came to one simple thing. How can we better serve people through what we do? How can we become better at connecting with people, building relationships, building trust, those things that drive great organizations? So let me share another one. Just last year, I was asked to come in and help an organization whose partners were struggling. There were several owners in that organization, and things had just kind of evolved over time into kind of a messy place where there was a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty, and nobody was sure who do you go to for what. And with multiple owners and not really a clearly defined structure, it's really difficult for employees to figure out, you know, how is this working and what is our game plan and where do we go from here? So I used a lot of the different tools to kind of help them create a strategy and then start to embed the emotional intelligence growth skill sets through assessments that gave us the data that then helped us identify where each of the individual's challenges were. And this became absolutely critical for the group of owners And the self-awareness that came out of that through the work that I was able to do with them helped them to see that there were some pretty big gaps and some things that were fairly easy to change. And so we built out the right management structure, we built out the right pathway forward for the organization. And today they're in a much better place than they were a year ago. Recently, very recently, a similar situation has come up with a previous client of ours that the partners are struggling, the people are struggling, they're trying to grow, but there's just a lot of challenges, and it's a crazy industry that they're in with a lot of changes and a lot of uncertainties. There's some friction between partners, there's some friction between employees, there's a lot of things going on. Because we had done work with them in the past, they reached back out to us. Granted, this is early in this re engagement with them, but the tools of emotional intelligence are pointing me directly to where the opportunities are to help bring things back to a much more productive place, a place where everybody can grow, everybody can be more successful and be more satisfied. And that's what we want. But you are not going to get there by throwing some process at it. You're not going to get there by throwing some ideal kind of operating system for organizations. And I'm not going to name any of those, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, there's new big fads out there about process and systems, and you know what? They're nothing different than a reorganized approach that we used to use, management by objectives and just good strategy planning and all of that kind of thing. It just, they have put it in newer ways that are easier to understand, which is fantastic. And I have absolutely nothing against those processes and procedures. I think those are incredibly helpful to people, but they do not answer the people issues. And frankly, if you look at it, most of these consultants, most of these processes, most of the approaches to helping businesses become more effective, more productive, more profitable do not deal directly with the human capital, the people. And people are the greatest asset any organization has. So now let's start to kind of recap and look at the emotional intelligence competencies we've been talking about and what we can do with those. Okay, let's start right off with number one, and this is in the area of self-awareness. Enhance emotional literacy. The ability to accurately identify and understand your own emotions and the emotions of others and the impact that that has on you. How do we apply that? How do we apply it in life and in work? Well, enhanced emotional literacy, it allows people to recognize their emotional state, literally being able to define the emotions they're having, which is going to help people better navigate them. It's going to enable people to make better decisions. It's going to improve interpersonal interactions, so communication and relationship building. And at work, this competency helps in managing stress and in responding constructively to colleagues' emotions. A lot of times, employees and leaders and even owners do not do a good job of that. They either just try to shut down somebody else's emotions, or they walk away from it, try to avoid it, or whatever. And granted, we don't want to promote drama in the workplace, but just thinking that those things are going to go away on their own is a recipe for disaster in the future. So the better our emotional literacy, the better we can understand emotions and how they're impacting people. How do we grow that? Well, we practice reflection to become more aware of our emotions. We think about them. I love, there's a concept called name it to tame it. And if you can name the emotion and face it, you have an excellent chance of taming it. Keep an emotion journal to track and reflect on your feelings throughout the day. It's a wonderful way to approach those things. The second emotional intelligence competency that we're going to talk about, again, falling in the self-awareness area, is recognize patterns. The ability to identify recurring behaviors, understand how they influence emotions and actions. Okay, what does that look like in life and work? Recognizing patterns helps people identify habits that may be hindering their success and then develop strategies to change those. I've got an entire other assessment that has a deep infusion of emotional intelligence in it called Habit Story. Probably one of the most impactful assessments I have seen in my 35 plus years of using assessments. It's a multi-science assessment that has different measures in it that really gets to the root cause of habits, whether they're productive or counterproductive, but then also helps you figure out how to change those. You can read more about that on our website, eqfit.org. In a professional setting, recognizing patterns aids in anticipating and even mitigating conflicts. So, really important competency and skill of emotional intelligence. So, how can we grow that skill? Reflect on past experiences to identify recurring emotional triggers. In the habit story assessment, we call that cues. What are the things that trigger or cue that emotion that then pushes us in a given direction? Seek feedback from trusted friends or colleagues to gain insight into behavioral patterns. These are, you can say patterns, you can call them habits, you can call them neural pathways. What happens is the more that you use those, the more they get reinforced. So if we stop to think about, is this something I want to reinforce in my life? If the answer is yes, then great, do that. But if it's no, this isn't really helping and this is kind of counterproductive, then figure out how to change it. And we've got all kinds of tools to help with that process. So now we're going to move into an area that we call self-regulation or self-management. And the first competency there is apply consequential thinking. The ability to evaluate the consequences of various actions or decisions before you take that action or make that decision. So it's like running what if scenarios in your head before you move forward. So that's more responsive than reactive. What does that look like in life and work? Well, applying consequential thinking helps people make more informed decisions by considering potential outcomes, so options. It's crucial for leadership roles where decisions can have very significant impacts on individuals, teams, and organizations. How do we grow this competency? Practice scenario planning to visualize the potential outcomes of different actions. Again, run those what if scenarios in your head and think through what is the likely outcome of option 1, option 2, option 3. Engage in decision-making exercises that require evaluating pros and cons. Part of what we're saying here is slow down a little bit. Put a little more thought into it. Now, different personality styles, which is a whole different set of episodes that I'm not going to go into yet, but different personality styles are going to approach this differently. And so some will be happy with taking more time, some will think that's a waste of time. But I recommend taking an appropriate amount of time to think through decisions and actions before you make them. The next one we'll look at, competency wise, in emotional intelligence, related to this self regulation, self management area, is what's called navigate emotions. The ability to manage and influence emotions to achieve better outcomes. It's just like it sounds. Can I navigate these emotions in a way that makes sense and really helps get the outcomes I want to get? Now, in life and work, when we can effectively navigate emotions, it helps us to maintain our composure under pressure. It helps us to foster a positive attitude and positive relationships. This competency, it's essential for conflict resolution. And by the way, just a side note here, I know most people don't like conflict, but conflict can be good. Healthy conflict is a good thing. It also helps to maintain morale, both for yourself and for other people, especially if you're a leader. How do we grow this? Develop mechanisms to manage stress, deep breathing, physical exercise, taking a walk, whatever you need to give yourself some space, some margin to effectively navigate those emotions. Engage in activities that promote emotional well being, hobbies, socializing with others, if that's your thing. But things that allow you, and I'm going to use that word again, to build some margin in your life so that everything doesn't become a priority and everything doesn't become a crisis. One of the biggest issues I see with people today, whether they're stay at home people or go to work people, it doesn't matter. One of the biggest issues I see is they've got their schedules so cram packed, there is no time to breathe. There is no margin. And that is a pathway to burnout. And burnout is a very serious thing. If you've listened to previous episodes, you'll know how seriously I take burnout. Right now, as of today, the Microsoft Workplace Study says that 53% of managers and leaders are currently in burnout. That is a horrible statistic. That's the majority of our managers and leaders are in some form of burnout right now. That is not good for anybody. All right, what's the next one? And now we're starting to talk motivation, okay? So the category of emotional intelligence called motivation. The first one is engage intrinsic motivation, the ability to harness inner drive and align our actions with our personal values and goals. In life and work, it fuels our persistence, our resilience. It helps people to overcome obstacles, to stay committed to their goals. In the workplace, it leads to higher job satisfaction and productivity. How do we grow that? Well, set personal goals that align with your values and passions. Reflect on your achievements and celebrate those, even the little ones. I'm horrible at not celebrating the little victories. I'm just always looking for the big victory. And that's not a good way to enhance your intrinsic motivation. Reflect on your achievements and the intrinsic rewards that they bring. Intrinsic rewards. So they shore up your beliefs and your values and all of that. This is not about money. It's not about status. Those are external, and those are notoriously unreliable for motivation. So the next competency in motivation is exercise optimism. The ability to maintain a positive outlook and find opportunities in challenges. Opportunities in challenges. How does that look in life and work? Well, it enhances resilience and adaptability. It allows people to bounce back from setbacks. In professional settings, an optimistic attitude really fosters a positive work environment. It encourages both yourself and other people. And this is where innovation and creativity start to really flourish, which we definitely want. How do we grow this competency? Practice gratitude by regularly noting things you're thankful for. Reframe negative situations by identifying potential silver linings or learning opportunities. Every mistake we make should be an opportunity to learn. So instead of practicing judgment and being your own worst critic, practice curiosity. What can I learn from this? What are the potential long-term benefits of what just happened? So now we're going to work with empathy. Empathy as a category, but empathy as a competency as well, what we call increased empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others, to understand their perceptions, their perspectives. In work, in life, empathy strengthens relationships by trust building and by understanding people at a deeper level. It helps to enhance teamwork, collaboration, by enabling people to connect with people on a deeper level. How do we grow that? Well, we actively listen to others. That means be fully present in the moment to listen to other people without interrupting or judging, especially that judging part. Put yourself in others' shoes to better understand their perspectives and their emotions. And then the eighth one I'm going to talk about is really related to a lot of different categories, almost all of the different categories of emotional intelligence. It's called pursue noble goals. The ability to align daily actions and decisions with a greater sense of purpose and vision. Think of it as, what kind of a legacy do I want to leave to people? What is my standard that I hold my decisions and actions up to? What does that look like in life and work? Well, pursuing noble goals provides a sense of direction and fulfillment. It is your compass. It keeps you headed in the right direction. It motivates people to strive for meaningful achievements, not just getting a task done, but what is the greater purpose that I'm here for? What am I adding to? How am I impacting my world? In the workplace, it inspires leadership. It drives organizational success. Now, how do we grow that? Well, first, define what your core values and beliefs are and what your long-term vision is. Then regularly reflect on how your decisions and actions contribute to your greater purpose. Okay, if we did all of that just to do it, it wouldn't have as much value, it wouldn't have as much return on investment, it wouldn't have as much purpose if we didn't focus in on something very important here. We're talking about how to do things. Now let's talk about the why. Why are we building these emotional intelligence competencies and skills? Well, we need to build up our internal resources, and we do that primarily through building up these emotional intelligence competencies. And here's what those internal resources look like that are essential for thriving in our world today. Number one, agility. Emotional literacy and consequential thinking enhance the ability to adapt to new situations by providing clarity and foresight. Resilience. Optimism and intrinsic motivation foster a positive mindset and provide greater determination, which enables people to recover from setbacks faster and be able to move forward in a shorter time frame. Focus is another critical internal resource. Recognizing patterns and navigating emotions helps maintain concentration and helps us to manage distractions. Persistence. Intrinsic motivation and pursuing noble goals drives sustained effort toward achieving long-term objectives. And confidence. Empathy and emotional literacy build self-awareness and interpersonal skills, which contribute to a strong sense of self-assurance. I'm going to read just those internal resources again. Resources that we can build for ourselves internally and store up for those times we need them. Agility, resilience, focus, persistence, and confidence. The 8 competencies of the 6 seconds model of emotional intelligence are invaluable tools for navigating the complexities of our world today. By enhancing these competencies and skills, emotional literacy, recognizing patterns, applying consequential thinking, navigating emotions, engaging intrinsic motivation, exercising optimism, increasing empathy, and pursuing noble goals. When we grow those competencies and the skills that go with them, people can build the internal resources necessary for greater success and for greater satisfaction in life and in work. These skills not only improve personal well-being, but also foster more productive and harmonious professional environments. You want to change the culture in your organization or your team? This is the pathway to do that. As the world continues to evolve and change, the importance of emotional intelligence will only grow. It will only become more and more important, making it an essential focus for personal and professional development and for what that brings, which is greater success and greater satisfaction in life and in work. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you have any questions about this week's episode, or maybe a suggestion for future episodes you'd like us to explore, please contact us through our website at eqfit.org. For more information and inspiration, connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube at EQFit.